Hello and welcome to my presentation on anxiety learning. My name is Anastasia Berrigan, and this presentation is conducted for course PIDP 3300. I am a nurse and I have been teaching now for 3.5 years while I'm team leading at BCC for level 3 of a practical nursing department. I've had an absolute pleasure working in the healthcare field where I've encountered many people living and dealing with anxiety on a daily basis. As I've entered the field of education, I found that anxiety is even more in the front line and a bigger concern that I need to address as I provide knowledge to the future nurses. Before we proceed, I would like to acknowledge that we are working and living in the lands of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, we are traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today. We pay our respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, recognizing their enduring connection to this land, water, and community. Let us reflect on the significance of Indigenous knowledge and contributions to education and society. Also, I welcome diversity. As we begin our discussion today, I also want to warmly welcome diversity within this room. Each person brings unique experiences, perspectives, and backgrounds. This diversity enriches our learning and fosters a more inclusive environment. Together, let's engage with respect and openness as we explore how anxiety impacts learning in various educational contexts. And now I've already briefly introduced myself, but I'd like to share that I'm exceptionally passionate about healthcare and education and about our public. I chose this topic because anxiety has become exceptionally prevalent in our communities, and particularly it affects the ability of our students to receive quality education and knowledge, as anxiety can really hinder ability to learn. So, what is the difference between stress and anxiety? And considering that I am recording this lecture and nobody else is here, I will leave this moment for you to potentially pause and reflect on what differences you may see between anxiety and stress and how one may contribute to the other. All right, now that you had opportunity to reflect, I'll share what I've gathered from my research. And basically, understanding chronic stress is something that will, over a prolonged period of time, lead to anxiety. So chronic stress does occur when a person faces prolonged exposure to stresses without adequate recovery. These stressors may include academic pressures, social challenges, or ongoing responsibilities. In educational settings, the continuous demands like deadlines and exams can contribute to chronic stress over time. Now, transitioning from stress to anxiety, while stress is a natural process and could be healthy because it does facilitate learning new concepts, it can enhance performance as well. But chronic stress actually disrupts the body's ability to recover from stress. Over time, the state of high alertness can lead to anxiety, where mind anticipates threats even without immediate stressors. Unlike stress, which can typically dissipate when the resource is removed, anxiety continues to persist, resulting in excessive worry and unease. Albund and Hoffand note that while stress is linked to identifiable causes, anxiety has more pervasive effects on daily life and functioning, particularly in the context of education. So now I have a question for you. Which of these processes is most impacted by anxiety? And this is where you can pause and reflect. And hopefully, now that you had opportunities to reflect, I hope you're aware that it will impact all of these learning processes. However, attention and working memory would be the ones we would identify forefront. Anxiety and its impact on learning. Anxiety and chronic stress do hinder essential cognitive processes, just like we mentioned in our previous slide. And it impacts particularly attention, memory, and executive function. Chronic stress disrupts focus, causing hypervigilance towards threats rather than tasks, leading to distractibility. Memory is also being affected because anxiety negatively impacts working memory and long-term retrieval, making it hard to absorb new information and recall it during assessments. Executive function is also being impacted because chronic stress and anxiety impair problem solving, planning, and organization, making time management and complex tasks difficult. Cassidy and Johnson noted that cognitive test anxiety significantly affects academic performance. It also has an impact on emotional and behavioral outcomes. Chronic stress induces anxiety's effect on emotional regulation. Emotional exhaustion, for example, is when anxiety persists, can lead to fatigue, reduced motivation, and engagement in learning, which fosters a cycle of underperformance. Anxiety can cause procrastination and avoidance of classes or participation, undermining academic success and social skills. It will also have effects on long-term academic consequences as it shifts from chronic stress to anxiety. Poor performance may be noted, grades may be lower. There may be an increase in the dropout rates due to level of exhaustion and students feeling overwhelmed. Beepler noted that anxiety can make non-traditional learning environments like active learning classroom more stressful, and we will talk about it shortly. Therefore, it's important to recognize anxiety early to manage its effect on academic success. There are multiple interventions that could be implemented, and we will look at them closer towards the end of our discussion. Sisek argued that anxiety's detrimental effect on cognitive control can be managed by teaching students strategies to refocus their attention, thus improving performance even under stressful conditions. This question goes out to you. Have you been anxious? How did your learning differ when you were stressed as opposed to when you were relaxed? Please reflect, and we will proceed. So as a nurse, of course, I cannot ignore that there's a neurological perspective on anxiety as well. It is a complex emotional response linked to neurobiological processes. Understanding its neuroscience can help individuals manage symptoms through strategies such as cognitive behavioral techniques, which are mentioned by Pittman and Carl, which we will address shortly. But there's also pharmacological interventions that may be necessary. There are brain structures that are involved in anxiety, and I will share them with you on a higher level. So amygdala is the key processing station for fear. It detects threats and triggers the body's stress response, increasing heart rate and alertness. So the symptoms can become very physical. Prefrontal cortex is responsible for decision-making and emotional regulations. Decrease in activity of the prefrontal cortex in individuals that are anxious impairs control over the amygdala, leading to heightened fear response. And then the hippocampus is crucial for memory and context. It helps differentiate past from present. In anxiety disorders, its effectiveness may diminish, causing overgeneralized fear responses. And now, pointing out that neurotransmitters also have a play in anxiety. Serotonin, when it's in low levels, is linked to anxiety and depression. There are treatments with SSRIs that aim to increase serotonin, and those are used to treating anxiety and depression. GABA is a primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. When there's a reduction in GABA activity, it is associated with higher levels of anxiety as well. And there's the norepinephrine, which is involved in the stress response, and elevated levels can increase arousal and anxiety. As you can see on the picture that I have here, normal brain as opposed to anxious brain has a lot less activity. There's a lot more blue zones, which generally allow for more relaxed mental state, which would lead to higher quality of learning. So anxiety and its effect on working memory. So it does significantly impact working memory, which is vital for learning academic performance. Working memory holds and manipulates information temporarily, and anxiety disrupts this system, making it difficult to learn, problem solve, and recall information, especially during exams. How does anxiety affect working memory? Well, anxiety overloads working memory with intrusive thoughts and worries, consuming mental resources needed for the task. Cassidy and Johnson found that students with high test anxiety struggle to retrieve information due to distractions from fears of failure. Repetitive negative thinking competes for attention, diverting focus from relevant information. Psychological changes like increased heart rate further impair working memory, preoccupying their brain with perceived threat. Anxiety can also hinder retrieval of information. Anxious students often feel blocked when they try to recall information despite their prior knowledge. Once again, Cassidy and Joseph noted that high test anxiety leads to poor exam performance, not from lack of knowledge, but from disrupted access to that knowledge. So what happens is retrieval failure, which occurs under pressure, causing temporary difficulty in recalling facts. Those students may remember once the anxiety subsides, and it may be too late to correct that one. Relationship between anxiety, attention, and memory is something else that I'm going to address right now. So anxiety does shift attention away from tasks, reducing focus on essential learning elements. So attention control theory is something that's been created by Isaac and his team, and it addresses the concept that anxiety decreases goal-directed attention and increases responsiveness to distractions, diverting focus away from the tasks. It does reduce attention during learning, which negatively impacts memory encoding, making it harder to retrieve information later when needed. High pressure testing also exacerbates anxiety, leading to a cycle where anxiety impairs performance and increases future anxiety. In their study, Cassidy and Justin suggest that students often spend more time managing anxiety than answering questions during times they're being tested. So now, how does the anxiety affect attention? It does profoundly affect attention and focus, impairing concentration on learning tasks due to attentional bias, which is the tendency to fixate on perceived threats rather than relevant information. This diversion of cognitive resources hampers academic performance. So Bear-Haim and his team found that anxious individuals are more likely to focus on threats, consuming mental resources needed for learning. In class, an anxious student may worry about performance or fear peer judgment, diverting attention from the lesson. Anxious individuals are also more sensitive to distractions, reacting strongly to irrelevant stimuli, whether internal or external, like background noises or racing thoughts. This makes it challenging to maintain attention on learning tasks. Anxiety also leads to worry about performance and social interactions, pulling focus away from immediate tasks. For example, worrying about an exam performance can prevent effective study, creating a cycle of poor performance and increased anxiety. Anxiety also impacts attention in the way it contributes to learning outcomes. Students may miss key information during lectures due to anxiety. They may struggle with comprehension and problem solving due to distractions. And memory retrieval is impaired, as lack of focus during learning hinders information encoding. So now we'll focus on active learning classrooms, which generally promote student engagement through collaboration and flexible layouts, but they can increase stress for students with anxiety disorders. It is a non-traditional design, and unlike traditional classrooms, ALCs lack structure layouts, which can disorient anxious students. Biepler found that the dynamic environment can exacerbate anxiety, as these students often prefer familiar settings, arrangements that provide a sense of safety. Biepler highlights that assigned seating can increase discomfort, particularly if students are placed in more exposed areas, making it harder for them to concentrate. In ALC, instructors generally move more freely, which can create unpredictability and increase anxiety for students who prefer a stable focal point. Biepler notes that constant movement may pressure anxious students to interact more, highlighting their discomfort. While group activities can be intimidating for students with social anxiety, Biepler found that over time, they can foster a sense of community that alleviates stress. However, this process requires time and support from instructors. ALCs often have high ambient noise levels that can overwhelm anxious students, making it difficult to focus. Biepler points out that sensory overload can trigger psychological responses, further distracting from learning. Attention control theory was developed by Eysenck and his team, which explains how anxiety disrupts cognitive performance by impairing attention control. Anxiety shifts focus from task-relevant stimuli to worry-related distractions, compromising performance on tasks that require concentration. Some of the key concepts in ACT are between two attentional systems, which are goal-directed system and stimuli-driven system. Goal-directed system maintains focus on relevant tasks and goals, while stimuli-driven system reacts reflexively on external stimuli, especially threats. So anxiety disrupts the balance between these systems, making stimulus-driven system dominant. This shift leads anxious individuals to focus on irrelevant or threatening stimuli, hindering their ability to concentrate. Anxiety leads to intrusive thoughts about potential negative outcomes, consuming cognitive resources and making it difficult to focus. Eysenck and his team know that this worry creates an attentional bias, causing anxious individuals to concentrate on irrelevant threats like fear, failure, rather than the task at hand. So ACT differentiates between performance anxiety and performance effectiveness. So performance efficiency and performance effectiveness. So performance efficiency is cognitive effort required to complete a task, and performance effectiveness means success or accuracy in completing the task. So anxiety typically reduces performance efficiency, meaning anxious individuals may require more effort to achieve similar results as their non-anxious peers. This increases cognitive load and can lead to fatigue and decline in performance over time. Now we're going to look at cognitive biases. Anxiety is often accompanied by cognitive distortions that affect perception, decision-making, and learning. These distortions lead individuals to focus excessively on perceived threats and negative outcomes, hindering effective learning. Cognitive distortions are irrational thought patterns that can lead to negative emotions and behaviors manifesting in a few ways. So anxious individuals sometimes focus on threats while ignoring positive cues, creating a pervasive sense of danger that interferes with learning, which we would classify as selective attention. Also, overgeneralization may occur, where a poor performance on a test may lead students to believe that they will always fail, causing them to avoid the further academic challenges that may be forthcoming. They are also known to catastrophize, which involves expecting the worst outcome, such as thinking, if I make a mistake, I'll fail the course, which can be very paralyzing for the learning. Anxiety significantly distorts perception and decision making. So there is a heightened vigilance. Individuals with anxiety become hyper aware of potential threats, misinterpreting neutral comments as negative or critical. Anxiety leads to avoidance behaviors such as not practicing in class, limiting learning opportunities, and reinforcing anxiety further. This is perhaps one of the most common anxieties that us, the educators, get to see, which is the test anxiety, and it does affect academic performance. Test anxiety is a specific form of performance anxiety that leads to excessive worry and fear during exams, which negatively affect academic performance. It is prevalent among students of all ages and can significantly hinder learning. Cognitive test anxiety involves mental processes that contribute to anxiety, such as worry, fear of failure, negative self-evaluation. Unlike physical symptoms, it disrupts mental functioning, impairing concentration and recall during exams. So Cassidy and Johnson found that students with higher cognitive test anxiety typically perform worse academically, as a worry disrupts from essential cognitive processes like working memory. Worry is a major factor in cognitive test anxiety, leading students to fixate on potential failures rather than focusing on the exam content. This worry consumes mental resources needed for recall information, causing intrusive thoughts that distract from the test. For example, an anxious student may think, what if I fail? Which diverts attention from questioning the questions themselves, which results in mistakes and slower responses appear. Test anxiety can also create self-reinforcing cycle. Poor performance due to anxiety leads to increased anxiety in future tests, reinforcing negative beliefs about academic capability. Once again, Cassidy and Johnson describe how this cycle can contribute to academic underachievement, causing students to avoid studying and develop negative attitudes towards schoolwork. Students with high test anxiety are more likely to underperform on high-stake assignments, which impacts their grades and self-esteem. And now moving on to a case study, I would like to bring an example and share with you an example of a student that displays many of these forms of anxiety, which may remind you of some of the students that you have taught, or perhaps even yourselves. So we have Emma. She's a 20-year-old college sophomore studying psychology. She struggled with anxiety since high school, which manifests as excessive worry about academic performance, difficulty concentrating, and fear of social interactions, especially in classroom settings. Emma experiences cognitive test anxiety characterized by intrusive thoughts about failing, just like Cassidy and Johnson have highlighted. As midterms approach, she often ruminates. She worries, thoughts like, what if I forget everything? Or what if my professor thinks I'm not incapable? She's also distracted. During study sessions, her mind drifts to potential failure, aligning with Hayek and his team's theory, who note that anxiety diverts attention from relevant tasks. On exam day, her anxiety peaks. Despite preparation, she struggles to recall information and second guesses her answers, leading to lower scores. This reinforces her belief in her academic inadequacy, illustrating the cycle of anxiety and underachievement described by Cassidy and Johnson. Emma's anxiety also affects her social interactions, particularly in active learning classroom. The non-traditional layout heightens her stress. She develops social anxiety where group activities trigger her feelings of vulnerability. The thought of speaking in front of her peers causes physical symptoms like sweating and increased heart rate, consistent with Raffague's findings on his anxiety disorders perception. Despite being in a supportive group, fears judgment and withdraws from discussions, leading to isolation and hindering her collaboration with learning experience. So there are a few compounding factors. Environmental factors exacerbate Emma's anxiety. The ambient noise from stimulus student discussions distracts her further, making it even harder to engage in group work. So these challenges highlight the need for targeted interventions, such as anxiety management techniques and supportive classroom environment to help the students succeed in the future. By addressing these issues, we as educators can create more inclusive learning atmosphere that meets the need of all students. And this will take us into anxiety management strategies. So what has worked for you in the past, or what continues to work? Do you share this knowledge with your students, as it is essential in every classroom? So creative supportive learning spaces is vital for helping students thrive both academically and emotionally. Educators should implement strategies to alleviate this anxiety by prioritizing comfort, accessibility, and engagement in classroom design. Educators can enhance the learning experiences of their students. So classroom design significantly impacts the learning environment and opportunity. So research by Buchler shows that non-traditional layouts such as ALC can either reduce or increase anxiety for students, particularly those with anxiety disorders. Key design elements may include rearranging seating, making it more flexible for students, considering instructors' mobility and how they integrate with the class. Creating also supportive atmosphere is essential. So establishing clear expectations, clear guidelines for what is expected from students. Also encouraging a growth mindset, promoting the idea that challenges are opportunities for growth, which can alleviate the fear of failure in general. Hopefully encouraging students to view effort and learning from mistakes positively rather than scrutinizing. Also, building rapport with students helps create supportive environment. Regular check-ins and informal communication can reduce feelings of isolation and anxiety. Also, incorporating mindfulness and relaxation techniques into your classroom. So some of the mindfulness practices that you may choose to incorporate would be breathing exercises or short meditation. Also, how about suggesting students to join a stress reduction workshop where they can learn different practical tools for coping with academic pressures? Also, using technology to enhance engagement. So some of the collaborative tools that can be used are platforms for group discussions and projects that enable students to connect outside of the classroom, fostering community and easing in-class participation anxiety. Also, anonymous feedback opportunities may allow students to express concerns without fear of judgment, helping educators adapt their methods to better meet the needs of the students. Cognitive behavioral approaches are also effective in helping students manage anxiety by fostering self-awareness and promoting cognitive restructuring. According to Pittman and Carl, these strategies enable students to recognize and alter their thought patterns, reducing anxiety and enhancing well-being. Self-awareness is crucial in managing anxiety, allowing individuals to identify their thoughts and feelings in response to stressors. Strategies to enhance self-awareness include journaling, potential mindfulness meditation, or maybe emotional check-ins, where regular emotional assessments may encourage students to recognize their own anxiety and how it rises, and potentially allowing them to create protective steps to manage it. Cognitive restructuring involves challenging negative thought patterns, contributing to anxiety. So Pittman and Carl suggest several strategies. Identify negative thoughts, meaning recognizing distortions, such as catastrophizing or all or none type of thinking. Awareness of these patterns is really the first step in questioning their validity. Then students can challenge these negative thoughts by asking, what evidence supports these thoughts? What evidence contradicts it? And how would I advise a friend with this thought? This process helps students view the thoughts more objectively, reducing their impact. The thoughts can be reframed with a constructive perspective. For example, changing a thought, I will fail this exam, to I have prepared well and I can do my best, can significantly reduce anxiety and boost self-efficiency. Also setting goals and gradual exposure. So setting realistic goals empowers students to manage anxiety. This involves breaking tasks into manageable steps and gradually facing anxiety-inducing situations, such as maybe starting small group discussions before stepping out in front of the entire class. Also, building coping mechanisms may be essential. So Pittman and Carl also emphasize the importance of developing coping mechanisms. Such as maybe problem-solving techniques that may be effective, maybe relaxation techniques, where a person may choose to deep breathe and focus on relaxing their muscles while they're being stressed. Mindfulness and relaxation may also be approached through a variety of techniques I've listed here. So some of the mindful practices that you may be familiar with is mindful breathing, for example, body scan meditation, where an individual will systematically focus on different body parts and promote relaxation and enhance self-awareness. There may be also mindful observation involved, where students will choose to focus and notice details which distract them from anxious thoughts. So maybe redirecting that attention. Relaxation techniques will reduce physical tension and promote calmness. But there's progressive muscle relaxation technique, which involves tensing and relaxing muscle groups to recognize and release physical tension. Guided imagery is another example, where visualizing calm scenes can help relax. Visualization in general. So, for example, imagining a successful handling of stressful situation can also reduce anxiety. There's also a variety of apps right now that can be used, which are very convenient, as there's accessibility aspect of it. They can be customized to the needs of every individual. There's progress tracking, which can be very motivating, and community support can be created through those apps. Some of the popular apps that you may come across are Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer, Stop, Breathe, and Think. You could look those up and see what works best for you. Share your feedback with me if any of these may be your favorite, and maybe you have some recommendations. So time management would also be important to understand, considering that adult learners do juggle work, family, and education. And it is important, according to Colorado Christian University, that implementing specific strategies for adult learners can help them reduce their stress by managing time better. Currently, adults are overwhelmed by competing demands. They face unique challenges, and effective time management would be key. So some of the tips that I may give is maybe prioritizing tasks, setting realistic goals, SMART goals, something that could be achievable and time-bound, creating a structured schedule, incorporating breaks, utilizing time management tools. So our time is running short. I will continue moving us forward through our presentation here. I'm just going to address one final point, because this is relevant to all of us, the educators, and this is the homework balance. And it's been pointed out in the Frontier Psychology magazine that it's essential to strike balance in homework workloads to support academic success, as it's been shown that students spending over 3 hours on homework daily often experience heightened level of stress and anxiety, which creates a cycle where more homework leads to higher level of anxiety, impairing cognitive function and academic performance. While moderate homework can reinforce learning, excessive assignments can be counterproductive. So instead of overwhelming students with excessive amount of work, we need to be more effective in the types of assignments that we're sending them home with. And this brings me to the end of my presentation on brain and anxiety and how it impacts adult learning. I would like to welcome some questions at this time. And considering that no one was able to attend my presentation live, I would gladly respond to your questions if you post them into our discussion board here under my video. Thank you for your time and your attention, and have yourself a lovely rest of the day. Goodbye.